Welcome back, everybody, to another great edition of Transitions to Transformation Radio Show. Tonight I have another very special guest. His name is Dan Bailey, and he's going to help dispel the myths and many doomsday prophecies surrounding this infamous date of December 21st, 2012, as the Mayan calendar ends on this day and people think it's the end of the world. Not. Dan's book is aptly titled The 2012 Clock. What time is it? This book is chock full of the information Dan has collected over many years of research. In this book, Danny Bailey illuminates many of the prophecies from history and assigns them to activities that are cyclical in nature to assist the reader in understanding that the 2012 event is more and less than advertised. Less in a way that the end of the world is not just around the corner, more in that the 2012 event is more of an era and is based on cycles. Using the cyclical nature of the Mayan long count calendar that resets itself to zero, a number that the Mayans understood before any other major civilization to begin its count again, Danny points out that the other events and activities from around the world that have been forecast are also of a cyclical nature and can be used to assist in preparing for the 2012 era transition. Danny has been fascinated by all of the misinformation transmitted in the last century about the impact of the Mayan calendar, and after much research, he decided that the statement is really the end of the world as we know it. This can be physical as well as spiritual. So, by looking to the past, we can get a better view of the potential future as it was told to us over several thousand years. Although born in Northern California, Danny has lived or worked in 22 states and parts of Canada. During his business career, he was always researching bits and pieces of articles or shows about prophecies and has now decided that this was the right time to share years of gathering information with others who might have the same interests. Dan is a lecturer and author on several other topics as well. They include relationship balancing, successful internet dating, your kids can't hear you, and I'm not 25 anymore. Well, hey, you can see a full synopsis of each topic on his website, www.newspiritreflections, and that's NU spiritreflections.com. Before I introduce Dan Bailey, I'd like to read some small but great tidbits from his book. 2012 is an era. It really began around 2006 and runs through 2015 or 2023, depending on how you do the math. This era is a culmination of more than single, seemingly unrelated cycles that by themselves have been hard to deal with in the past. Now that they are aggregating, they will push us to the edge and possibly beyond. Folks, we have a choice. We can create our own future. This is what happens to the human race. We never make changes until we are pushed to the precipice, and then we step back or change direction. Or rather, then we step back or change direction. 2012 is about changing direction. We, as a species, are going through a growth spurt that has undefined results. We are starting to question everything. This is needed to help break old patterns and set the stage for letting go of old ideals and preparing to embrace new ones. On that note, I'd like to introduce author and lecturer Dan Bailey. Hello from my heart, Dan, and thanks so much for joining us all tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. We just had a blast with Miriam last time we were on the show. You know, unfortunately the recording didn't come out so great, so we're redoing it again. But we're going to have fun tonight too.
Well, I was going to come on here and say, oh, I'm actually Nostradamus. I've come back from 500 years. But I thought, no.
No, you think you just skip that. Oh, Dan, I absolutely love your book. It is small, concise, and packed with information. So I just absolutely love it, and it's so true. Really, it's the end of a cycle. 2012 is the end of a cycle, and it's also a change of consciousness. You know, for people that are in a funk, so to speak, their funk's going to get worse because the vibration they're vibrating. Actually, let me backtrack a little bit. The Earth has a magnetic can't even speak now. The Earth has a magnetic field, and so do we humans. our magnetic field is called the human aura, and you know, and they
Yours
vibrate.
just blinked, by the way, but anyway.
Can you see anything?
Oh.
It's funny. But it's so true. It's, you know, the Earth has a magnetic vibration, and so do we. And, you know, what we think, speak, do, act upon, it affects everybody. It affects the planet. And it's so important to do, you know, to be mindful of what we do and what we speak. You know, words have power behind them. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you personally, I had an experience where I used to work for the Postal Service. That right there tells you.
Yeah. Don't go postal on us now.
No,
okay.
no. And, you know, I love my job. I love the people I work with. But, you know, sometimes it could really get very stressful. Mm-hmm. And one day I just called it upon myself. I said, you know, I know what kind of day it's going to be. You know, I looked up at that big, menacing brick building, and I said, I just know what to expect. I'm going to get called in the office. I'm going to be short in my drawer. I'm going to mess up like you won't believe. And sure enough, not even 10 minutes I was at work. All those things happen. So, you see, folks, it's very important not to... see, we actually create our day. Mm-hmm. Like Jay-Z Knight says. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Jay-Z Knight, but it's a woman that channels... a spirit. Okay. And she says that we create our day. You know, it's important how we create our day because of these magnetic fields and the vibrations. You know, what we think, speak, do, we attract right back. It's what I call the cosmic boomerang. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, it's very important that we're mindful of that. But back to 2012, which this is all a part of it, but I went off on my tangent. So what do you have to say about the subject?
Nothing. No. Well, yeah, you kind of hit on the highlights and stuff. I will back up a little bit. My book is very short. It's about 65 pages. It originally got started because I did my lectures first, and and I decided to create a workbook because part of the book is about what's happening in the 2012 era, and it's all about cycles, what we need to watch for, how we can impact the cycles, what we need to do for ourselves. And then the latter part of the book is really some activities that we as individuals or as groups can take and focus towards relearning certain aspects and putting it all together. Well, as it turns out, as my lectures grew, more and more people couldn't make the lectures. And so they wanted copies of my workbook, and I go, well, tell you what. So I really just took the workbook, and I started adding in some of the stuff right out of the lecture so that if they missed the lecture, they would end up getting some of this information up front. And then, of course, they started asking questions, and one thing led to another, so I'm back to doing lectures as well. That's
great. I really enjoyed your lecture a few years back on 2012, and you know, this man is very knowledgeable, and you've done the research for a long time, many years, about 8 years?
Yeah, it on and off for about 8 years. I've been doing lectures for about 4 years, both privately and in the public. I've done several Body, Mind, Spirit expos, and then several private spirit shows and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and we continually add to it because, as I say, this is all about cycles.
Oh yeah, it sure is.
And when we come back next time in the next segment, we'll start talking about some of those cycles and what's happened recently in the last 10 years, what's happening now, and probably what will happen in the next few years.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we have like another 2 minutes left.
Oh,
we have
okay.
another 2-minute segment. I put in 2 extra minutes because I know you like to talk.
Do I like to talk? Well, I'm going to start my own radio show. No.
Yes, you could.
Well, okay, let's start a little bit about the cycles. When I went back and I looked at many of the people in the past that had done predictions and had made comments, some of them are well known. Some of them aren't, like Sir Isaac Newton and Leonardo da Vinci. Yes. Both have entire books that they've done for prophecies, which most people don't realize. Hopi Indians, Mother Shipton, of course Edgar Cayce, the Hindus books, you get into the Bible and the Quran and all. They all talk about the period that we're now going through. Yeah. Not necessarily December 21st, 2012. We will talk about that because that is a significant day within this overall era.
Yeah.
But the era really starts at 2006, goes through 2023, and we're already seeing, I mean, when you look back at between 2006 and 2012, short period of time really in the scheme of humanity and everything else, but look at all the things that have happened in the last 6 years. When you look at Haiti and you look at Japan and you look at the Chile volcano, earthquake, and all the different aspects that come through, in and of themselves are, I wouldn't say insignificant, but again, they're events, and so we use those as a base, but then they drop out of our memory and we go on to the next thing, whatever happens to be in the news. But when you take all of those and put it together, like 2010, in the first 3 months, there were 13 earthquakes around the world. Well, 11 of them took place in the Gulf of Mexico or surrounding area. What was interesting, and most people don't realize, the other 2 that took place were at the exact opposite points in the world, on the planet.
Oh, yeah. Tectonic plates are moving, and the shift is happening. The Earth's vibratory field and our vibratory field, that's all changing, and that's part of the growth that the planet and what, and also the growth that we're going through right now.
And we've disconnected.
Yes.
When you go back to previous civilizations, they were much better. Oh my goodness, they were much more in tune with their spirit and the spirits around them.
Oh, there we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Transitions to Transformation Radio. Well, we're going to play some more good music later, but right now we're going to talk for about a good 10 minutes, and we do have a caller on the line. It is Reverend Lee Thomas Marsh. Welcome, Reverend Lee Thomas Marsh, to Transitions to Transformation Radio. And what question did you have for our speaker tonight, Dan Bailey?
Well, it's a little bit multi-part. First, I realize that what we're going through with the whole 2012 thing is a transition, and it's a threshold of which the 21st happens to be kind of the middle of it, so that the date itself isn't as important as the fact that you're passing the middle line of it. But the date itself can be important, like the turn of the century was, the turn of the millennium was, because so many people believe that it is important. So in other words, the human consciousness is lending itself to the fact that this date's important, therefore it becomes important because of that. That was the first thing. The second thing was what I was talking about, Susan, earlier off radio, was the fact that it seems like in this period, especially this year, but this, it has been happening since the latter part of last decade, but especially during this period, it seems like those who are enlightened, the enlightenment gets amplified. Those who are ignorant, the ignorance gets amplified. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, I would agree with majority of it, because again, the amplification comes from multiple levels of energy and souls coming together in a commonality. Now, part of the 2012 era and the spiritual transition, which even the Mayans have predicted, is saying that we are reaching a balance point. And once we hit that pivot, or that balance, that pivot point for the balance, it will start to swing, and you will see less and less negativity.
Oh, yeah.
So we're letting go of many of the things that we've built up over the last 2,000-3,000 years, based on experience and passing down and things that we've carried. And as the transition takes place, which is one of the reasons that I really go back to what the Mayans did, because their civilization was not only extremely important as far as history goes, but the things that they're still teaching us, several thousand years later, having to do with the calendars and everything else. Their scenario really was that we will go through this period of turmoil and change, but as a group, as a society, and as a species, we will start to release some of the constraints that have held us to the negativity and really what I call the precipice. We always go up to the precipice and we never take action until we're right ready to step off, and then all of a sudden it's like we wake up and say, oh, I need to change.
Right.
This is the same type of thing. I mean, the Mayans have suggested, one of their 21 prophecies is that time as we know it will no longer be measured, which is one of the reasons I said they didn't need to make another calendar. In reality, the calendar is 5,000 years long. It's an era calendar. When it hits 0, that is the end of the 4th era, which was the materialistic era. It now begins the new era of spirituality. Right. So for the next 5,000 years. So you could really use their calendar all over again for the next 5,000 years, if you were so inclined. But their idea is that we take that next step. And as we see the activity that's happening throughout the world, people are questioning basic religions, they're questioning governments, they're questioning everything that's going on as they become more and more aware of a need for change. Some of that will be physical change, but a lot of that will be the change that we cause ourselves. And we get to choose the outcome.
Exactly.
And that's why I was so impressed with the Mayan 21 predictions, because their first 20 were, well, they're a little shaky if you look at them and stuff, because they do talk about a lot of the turmoil that's going to happen on the planet and all this. But the 21st, to me, the 21st one was really the most important out of all of them that come out, because it states we determine the outcome. Yeah. So as we shift and as we become aware and we become more spiritual and we get back in touch with each other, with nature, with the universe, because we're out of sync. To me, that's really what all these cycles are about. We're out of sync.
Yes.
And as Susan and I were talking earlier, when you walk down the street or you sit in an office, your energy is emanating and you cause that around you to try and get in sync with you. Well, if you're sitting there with a negative thought or you're upset because of something, that negativity vibrates, and unless people are protected, they're going to pick up that same vibration, which again goes back to what Lee says, it exponentially builds.
It does.
And so we can do the exact opposite with the positive energy.
Yes.
But we have to be aware, because it's so easy to fall into the, geez, I'm not feeling good today, or my boss just told me this, or, my girlfriend just left me, or, there's so many things that we perceive as being negative where they're really just minor changes. And it doesn't affect us except as we allow it to.
Right. It just takes a simple shift of perception. It's like I was talking about earlier when I worked for the Postal Service, and and I had those negative thoughts and those things came to fruition. And my friend John had come up to me. He was a coworker, and he was always upbeat, happy, great attitude. He pulled me aside and he goes, "Don't you know about the law of attraction?" And I said, "No, what is it?" I was completely oblivious to it. Mm-hmm. And it's like what you think, speak, do comes right back at you. It's like a cosmic boomerang.
Well, another book that I'm working on that hasn't made it as far as some of the other ones is actually called Embracing the Powers of.
Oh.
Because, again, so many different writers have gone out there and told us about the power of attraction, the power of time, the power of setting your goals, and all these different powers and stuff. And if you take a piecemeal and you take each one and you only do one of them, power of attraction, is a perfect example. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
If you emphasize the power of attraction, you will attract what you're subconsciously setting out there. It may not be in your best interest.
Right.
So you have to use that with the power of intention.
Oh, absolutely.
And with thinking about it, and that's what I was saying, as we're walking through, we're sitting in the office, if we send out positive energy, everybody that we connect with on an energy level as we're moving is going to pick up some of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's a scale of consciousness. David R. Hawkins, he is a physiologist, and he came out with a book, Power versus Force. Mm-hmm. And it illustrates this very thing. And he talks about our vibrations, how we vibrate at different levels. There's a scale of consciousness. At the very lowest, it's like if you vibrate at a 50, it's anger, it's lower emotions like anger and depression and all that. Mm-hmm. And at the top of the scale is 700. Now, if you vibrated at a 700, or at least at the very minimum, if you vibrated at a 500, mm-hmm. you can change, and this is what David R. Hawkins says, about 575,000 other people just by your vibration alone. So can you imagine? You really can be the change you wish to seek in the world. It all begins with you. And Lee did a sermon on that. And his sermon was, I believe it was the same name. It's all about you, or I don't remember the name of your sermon, but it was something along those lines.
Well, I did. It's all about you. Yeah, there was a sermon. I don't know if that's the one you're referring to now, but I did the sermon that it's all about you. That if you believe that these external circumstances are making you feel the way that you feel, world is just a mirror. So what you're feeling is just a reflection of what you're seeing, and I mean that's an old. This is nothing new. This is, probably your listeners have already heard that several times over. If you're sitting in a spiritualist church or a metaphysical church, you've probably heard that 100 times over. But it's something that I did that sermon, and Beverly, who's the head preacher, came up to me and I said, I know you've heard that before. And she said, it never hurts to hear it again. Because we forget.
Yeah, we need that reminder.
We forget that.
Well, and it's on perception, because two different people can always talk about, I talk about 2012. Two different people can talk about the events of 2012, and depending on what you hear is what you're going to take away from it. So every time you hear it, it reinforces the parts that you want to hear and you need to hear, and you get a different perspective. So, I mean, I agree. Even though, people may have heard it, 100 times before, they've heard it 100 different ways. So the pieces will always slide in that they need to hear at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
Right, and Dan, you have a kind of a metaphysical, or not a metaphysical, almost a physics type approach to the idea of energy, which reminds me of Michael Rice. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Rice, but he had a very physical approach to the whole thing, which works for some people, especially scientifically minded, matter of fact, I want to see proof on the paper before I believe it kind of people. Michael Rice was liked by those kinds of people who are not really faith-based, who don't want to. When I heard Roy G. Davis, who's my guru, I didn't need him to prove me anything. I just knew when I heard him speak that he was my guru.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But not everybody's like that.
Right. You have to resonate.
Not everybody will hear someone speak and say, "Hey, that guy is my guy."
Right.
Not everybody's like that, and I think that the scientific approach is appropriate for other people. So I have a lot of respect for Michael Rice and people like him, who was a doctor of physics, and he laid it out scientifically. He said that, what you see is what you get. What you put out is what you get back, and it's all about you. If you think that your external, what's happening externally is about that out there, you're missing the point. You don't get that, you're only seeing what you expect to see.
Exactly.
And I was intrigued by his message. Ultimately, it doesn't match my temperament. My temperament is more, a little bit more faith, a little bit more, I want to be endeared to my guru. I don't want to be impressed intellectually with my guru.
Right, yeah.
But, Dr. Michael Rice was impressive intellectually. He was actually, you could not say that this guy didn't know what he was talking about.
Right, yeah.
But that did not impress me like Roy Eugene Davis. When you looked into his eyes and he told you something, you believed it was true, period.
Oh, absolutely.
That's more my temperament. Where you felt like there was no ego there. There was no attempt to manipulate. There was nothing. He was speaking the truth to you, period. No manipulation, no attempt to try to convince you of anything. He was just stating the truth, and you either take it or you don't take it, and that is what impressed me about him.
Yes. Yeah, that impressed me about him, too. It's, he was just a regular guy dressed in a flannel shirt and jeans when I seen him. There was no boo-ha, ceremonies or anything.
Yeah, there was
about
no
him.
show.
There was no show.
That was the big thing. There's no show. And he's been doing it for 50 years, and he hasn't changed his message one iota in the entire 50 years. He hasn't changed his message one iota. Anyway, Dan, nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, my gosh, it's been forever and stuff. We'll have to do this again because there's two sides to this whole thing that's going on, and what I'm trying to do is kind of help people, I guess, become a little more aware of their surroundings and what's taking place, and hopefully that's going to happen in conjunction with the new spiritual release and the whether it's faith or whatever the people are looking for.
Yeah.
But there's a physical aspect to this as well.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So going up on top of a mountaintop and manifesting and stuff is not going to do too much good for you if the mountain below you is crumbling.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But just being prepared and what I really tout for the most part is prepare yourself, both physically and spiritually.
Yeah.
Don't wait till the last minute when the basket starts, developing holes in it, and you're like wondering why the water's leaking out. Kind of like start looking for those cracks in the bucket.
Yeah.
And say, look at things are going to happen. There is a planetary alignment, December 21st, 2012. It happens every 26,000 years. It will happen whether we're here or not.
Right.
It's going to happen. What's going to be the end result? We don't know. We weren't here 26,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and nobody bothered to take the recording. Could be absolutely nothing, just like turning 2000.
Oh, yeah. I think it's absolutely just going to be how we perceive things, and that's about it. And I'm going to talk about in the next segment a personal experience I had with Tropical Storm Debbie, how I did a meditation, and my half of the block was not flooded, and the other half was. I got it half right.
Yeah.
But
well, if you could have got your neighbors to join in, you might have saved the whole neighborhood.
We could have had a powwow. It's the end of the world as we know it. I love that song. I didn't intend on playing that twice, but somehow it did.
Well, there must have been a reason for it.
Yeah.
Must have been. Well, see, and as the closer we get to December 21st, things like this will pop up. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kidding.
We're going to really freak people out.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, my gosh, we weren't doing that. The universe must have stepped in and decided it was time to play the song again.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Since the Transformation Radio, this is Reverend Sue, along with 2012 researcher and lecturer and author of the book, The 2012 Clock. What time is it? Dan Bailey. And I also have Reverend Lee Thomas Marsh on the line, and Lee was talking about a sermon that he had done previously, and you want to pick up from there, Lee?
Well, this whole period that we're going through, the transition that we're going through, it makes some people look bad. If you look at the political right now, they're looking kind of bad. It's the laymen. They're discounting science. They're throwing science out. They're saying, women shouldn't be in control of their bodies. Blah blah blah. There's a whole lot going on there, but it really is just a reaction to fear. And in Vedic science, which I'm interested to hear Dan's view on that because I'm a Vedic scholar. Is we have a 26,000-year cycle of which we're on the upswing, meaning we're going into a more enlightened age. Not the most enlightened age, but we're going to a more enlightened age. And Paramahansa Yogananda had said, said, well, we're heading into an age where the number of people who are seeking spiritual guidance will exceed the number of qualified teachers. And that's why he was doing what he was doing. And I'm wondering what you think about that, and wondering what you think about the fact that, there does seem to be an accelerated level of ignorance in certain sects, or what we would perceive to be ignorance. These people are people. They're human beings. So, it's not that they're bad. It's not that, they're honestly doing what they think is the right thing, but from our perception, it doesn't look like the right thing.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of an awful lot to throw at you, Dan, but go ahead. What do you got?
Well, in the next segment, no. Well, actually, a lot of that does make sense. What I have been portending through all this change is, again, the folks in the past that have taken looks at this segment of the future based on their time frames, and of course we all recognize that time doesn't exist, but when they were looking at it, they really made some profound statements that we look at today and we're going, well, geez, how do they know that 500 years ago, or how do they know that 1,000 years ago, or whatever? And we look at that and we go, well, how does that apply to us today? And one of the things that we look at is technology. And we were kind of discussing this offline a little bit earlier. Technology has come to the point where it's actually outpacing its use. For the most part, technology was supposed to be a tool that helped us have more free time. It was supposed to help educate us. It was supposed to do all these other aspects, but what happened is that it grew at such an exponential speed, we didn't keep up with it.
Right.
And now technology in many cases drives what we do. And a perfect example, and we were talking about this the last time we did the show, was that I was sitting at a cafe, and of course I was on the computer, as everyone else was, and of course there were two or three teenage kids that were sitting at a table, and they were texting, which, like everybody does nowadays. What I came to find out, though, is they were texting each other. So rather than sitting there talking, because they had a wider group that was on the text messaging, they could send it to more people than just the three of them that were sitting there. But I said they've also lost the ability to communicate across the table.
Right, yeah.
And, I mean, here was three kids that were sitting across the table from each other, not saying a word to each other, but communicating through an electronic device that I'm just like going, and if you've talked to most people, I mean, one of the biggest problems in schools today are kids sneaking in their cell phones so that they can text and do other things on it. And I go, okay, at what point do we lose control of the technology that is supposed to help us? Well, then when you take that a step further, and I go back to Native Americans, previous civilizations, where they had an affinity with the planet and with the universe, the stars, the everything that was around them, because they were in sync. And with technology and changes and the exponential growth of our population, we have tended to lose that synchronicity with everything that is around us. We still create it because we're energy beings, and as we walk through a group of people or even driving and we have road rage, and it sets everybody else off because we're sending out that energy. It's just we're not as calm, so we don't control it.
Right.
And part of what I think is happening in 2012 is people become more aware of their spiritual connection, and they reconnect with those around them, both physically and spiritually, the planet, the universe. Even if the planet survives and we don't, we may not survive eventually in this corporeal form.
Right.
But our energy and our vibration, and those will all surpass. That goes on beyond.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It just goes to the next level or dimension or whatever you believe in. So I mean, even I look at this and the doomsayers, all say, well, planetary alignment, December 21st, 2012, happens every 26,000 years. Well, it's going to happen,
right?
Whatever, because it's happened, many, many, many times in the past, and it will continue to happen long after we as a species are gone.
Oh, absolutely.
So whether we transcend and become true energy or we just fade away, whatever happens, it will still happen because it is the cycle. And what 2012 to me about the era is, for the most part, if one cycle completes that has happened many times in the past, and we'll just pick Yellowstone National Park. It's one of 7 supervolcanoes on the planet. Yeah. It erupts every 260,000 years. Well, we missed the clock. Okay, it's been more than 260,000 years.
So it's time.
It's time, but let's be realistic. If it happens in the next 50,000 years,
right,
it's still pretty close. As far as it's concerned, because again, it won't affect us, but So when we look at this and we say, why is this kind of important? The 2012 era to me is important because we're here this time, okay, and we can impact the outcome, not necessarily the transitional factors that play into it. Like, personally, I don't think we're going to stop Yellowstone National Park from erupting if it's going to. We're not going to stop the planetary alignment.
Oh, no, not at all.
But 2012 is kind of an interesting era because we have all of these different cycles that are all coming due in the same time frame. The mystery planet in the solar system, Naribu, or I forget exactly how you say it, comes back about every 3,000 years, is due back in the solar system in this time. I mean, all these different things that happen, if they were to happen individually, for the most part, we might even miss it. Historically, we always have because we haven't had the communication that we have today.
Exactly.
But now, because we have technology and instantaneous, we're going to know when that planet comes back into the solar system.
Oh, absolutely.
We have no idea what the effect is.
No, none of.
So part of what I end up doing latter part of the book is to say, okay, we have a twofold aspect. We need to prepare ourselves physically because there will be physical changes to this planet. People, we're not going to stop it.
Right.
It's happened so many times before. The ice caps have melted. The oceans have gone up. Land masses have shifted. It happens.
Oh, yeah.
We're on a rock that's extremely volatile. But we also have the spiritual side. And that's really how it affects us and how it affects those around us and us as a species.
Right.
And if we can connect and reconnect and start exponentially building the positive energy, the same way that we've kind of developed the negative energy over the last number of years, imagine how that's going to turn it around.
Yeah.
Because we're at the precipice. I truly do believe that. I'm not a doomsayer, but we are at the precipice. We, and even the Mayans have suggested this, this is the age of spirituality.
It is.
We are at the edge of a new awakening.
We are. And we have to take care of our spiritual selves, our emotional selves, our physical selves, and the planet, too. Because, everybody talks about global warming and all this stuff going on. Well, it's all has to do with vibratory fields. The Earth's vibratory field, like I said before, the Earth has a magnetic field. We have a magnetic field called the aura, which I can see, and I know you can see too, Dan. So we know this to be real, and we affect each other. And I'll tell you a real quick story because we have a little bit under 2 minutes in this segment. But when Hurricane Debbie hit, it was pretty bad. I was actually worried because I live right on the water in a cul-de-sac right off the Gulf of Mexico, and the water was rising almost to the top of the seawall, and I was like, oh my God, I've never seen any place flood, before, so I was like, okay, I have to do something. All this knowledge I have to do something. Okay, what was I taught to do? I was taught to meditate. So I went in my room, I put on some meditation music, and I just thought peace, love, and just visualized it going out to sea. And the high winds, I kid you not. I mean, this is going to be a very bold statement I'm making, but if I didn't personally see this and experience this myself, I wouldn't be saying it. And I sat there and I meditated, and I got to tell you, half of my block, the part I was on, was safe. The other half of the block was actually flooded. I got it half right, but it's better than nothing. So if you gotten the whole block to meditate at the same time, you might have saved the whole neighborhood. I'm telling you, we should have had a powwow or something. I'm telling you. Well, we got about 28 seconds left. We'll be back very shortly. And hopefully different music's going to come on. Reinvent Yourself by Chris Chickering's going to come up, and Wake Up Everybody by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes is coming up. So we'll have a nice long little break here, and we'll see you shortly. We got about 4 seconds before we switch over. Stay tuned, everybody, and we'll be back. That's fun. Back to Transitions to Transformation Radio. This is your host, Reverend Sue. I have with me 2012 researcher, lecturer, and author of the book, The 2012 Clock, What Time Is It? Dan Bailey. And I also have on the line Reverend Lee Thomas Marsh. And I just wanted to say something really quick, and then I know Lee had a question. In a study conducted in 1993, over 3,000 yogic flyers and meditators went to Washington, D.C., which has one of the highest crime rates in the United States. There was a measurable drop in crime, 21% to be exact, and these participants proved that we affect each other and the planet with our personal energy, both negative and positive. So I just wanted to put that out there. And Lee, what was the question you wanted to ask Dan?
Well, completely unrelated to that, but
oh yeah, that's okay. I just threw that in.
I'm familiar with that study. You still there?
Yep.
Yes, we're here.
You're still there. I'm familiar with that study, and they went into the worst urban areas of the country, and they meditated on peace. And the crime rate went down.
Wow.
So there's definitely an effect between your consciousness and your outward. I talk a lot about how your outward world is not your real world. Your real world is your inward world. But there is an outward world. I mean, you do have to deal with the outside world from time to time. And how do you affect that outside world is you see the world that you want to see and project it. So, and which I think Dan would probably agree with.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping to teach out at the college and stuff is classes on meditation and on manifesting.
Yeah. And it's a lot to do with our thoughts, our speech, our actions. I can't say it enough. It took me long enough to realize it, when my friend John told me at the post office years ago. We're going back 6 years ago. I mean, it took me close to 6 years to finally realize, what he said was right. The law of attraction, what you think, speak, and do comes right back to you. Hey, that rhymes.
You recorded that, right? Okay.
I sure did. It's recording right now.
Right. Well, the part of what I was going to ask has nothing to do with any of that.
That's okay. I just throw stuff out there.
It was just kind of a trivia thing that maybe Dan has some insight into. The Egyptians thought all of this, and they encoded it into their belief systems and everything. And where does our current belief system here come from that? I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I can actually tie that in because I've looked at some of the different civilizations in the past, being the Mayans, the Hopi Indians, the Egyptians, and I truly believe, I'm one of those folks that truly believe that there are centers or halls of information that are still undiscovered. Because one of the things that the Mayans have said that will happen throughout this period of time is that much lost information and knowledge will be rediscovered in a timely manner in order for us to do things. When you look at most of the civilizations in the past, they all achieved great levels of knowledge and training and understanding, both physically and spiritually. Several of the civilizations in the past had running water. They had indoor toilets.
Oh yeah,
you know,
even batteries.
Batteries
made
and
with lemon juice.
All these different things that we've rediscovered.
Yeah.
So it's like every time we get to a certain level, we lose the connectivity. The civilization ends up decreasing, and then we have to go through the whole cycle again. So each time, though, we're learning to transcend through communication, written form, passing down of stories or whatever. We're taking the information that we've lost, and pieces of it are being transcended to the next generation, to the next civilization, and so we're getting to that point. Personally, I think that we're reaching the stage where we're not going to do what the Egyptians and Mayans and all of them did. We have an opportunity. I really truly believe that that's why we're here during the 2012 era. We're meant to be here for this reason. There are more people awake and aware during this era than any time in the past that we know of, because again, we don't know all of the civilizations. And transcending that and opening and reconnecting with everyone around us. I mean, it's hard to watch the news sometimes. You look at this and you're just like going, the droughts and the wars and the famines and and all this kinds of stuff.
All that negativity.
All of it's just like building and building and building, and yet you see this growth of new awareness, new spirituality in all forms. I mean, not just one scenario, and you see the decline of certain religions and increase of others, but it's all in a positive forward motion type of activity, because I think, again, that we're passing this on from generation to generation, and we've now reached a point where we're ready to do something else.
Absolutely.
We as a spiritual entity, we as in our connection with everybody, we're ready to take that next step.
We are.
Now, how major it is, I mean, okay, are we going to transcend energy beings tomorrow? Probably not. But we're at that precipice. I truly believe that that's what the 2012 era is all about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people have been going through, like people like me, I mean, I've gone through illness, divorce, I've gone through almost dying 3 times.
Can't get it right? No.
And I just can't get it right, no matter how much I try. Did I say I wanted to come back as a doctor?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Another story, yeah. Okay.
That's for another time. Sorry, folks. I get silly sometimes. But anyway, what was my point?
You were going through the transitions, and you've gone through all these different stages.
That's right.
That's why you keep me along here. Yes, okay.
And I went through all these changes in my life, and so many people are going through the same thing. They go through divorce, they go through illness, or almost dying. They lose almost everything they have, which was my case too. And you wonder why is this happening to me? Well, Greg Braden, he had a brilliant series called The 7 Unseen Mirrors, and in it he says that when people go through things like that, he said it's taking you to your next level of mastery.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know.
And our biggest problem in our physical beings as this, we don't have patience.
Yeah.
I mean, people that learn to meditate and do the spiritual connectivity and everything, it takes so many years just to get to the point where I can relax to do a meditation or a manifesting activity or something. We're so tied up in all this activity, making it happen, and pushing, and we're losing that. We're getting there. We're getting to that point where I'd like to see us turn into energy beings, but hey, that's a little later.
Yeah.
That's my next book. No.
That's your next book. Transformation.
Transformation.
Yeah, so it's been wonderful, just talking about all this, and so many people out there really, really need to know that, hey, we're going to be all right. Sure, the Earth does go through changes, but that's the cycles, that it goes through, the tectonic plates. I hope I said that right. They move around. They I mean, just like the Earth's magnetic field, it manipulates things, it moves things. We're going through the same thing. but with our emotions and, our spiritual side. So.
Well, and the really part of the book is not only what I was trying to do with the book was make people more aware so that they would question and then go out to the internet and libraries and everything and do a lot of the same type of research that I did and expand on it.
Yeah.
The whole idea really is just to make people more aware and then say, okay, now that I'm at this stage, again, there's two sides of this. There's the physical and there's the spiritual.
Yeah.
On the physical side, don't wait until, Florida is moving or or how long can you tread water? I mean, several of the seers in the past have all said, Florida is going away.
Yeah.
But the idea is don't wait until you're in the water before you learn how to swim.
Exactly.
And so the last part of the book that I have in there is the skill set that we've lost.
Yeah.
We need to rediscover.
Yeah.
And I do highly recommend two movies, and I tell everybody that, look, if you see these two movies, you kind of get the idea of what might be coming down. One of them is The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's right.
The way the movie ends is an electric magnetic pulse hits the planet and electricity is done away with.
Wow.
Talk about changing life as you know it.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not going to stop us. It's not going to kill us, but it could set us back technologically.
Right.
But it will also make life simpler. We will rely on each other more, so we will learn to reconnect.
Oh, yeah, and we'll definitely have to use the barter system.
Well, that was the second part, because I tell people in here, and I make some recommendations as to things that I've done. I've gone off and learned blacksmithing and postal. And then the other movie that you need to see is Kevin Costner's The Postman.
Yes.
And that really is about learning to barter and reestablishing life as we know it and coming back from a major change.
Yeah, that's good. And preferably see these movies before the electricity.
I never thought of that. I didn't see these movies. Okay, and I'll rent you my copies. No. But yeah, it's I've actually had people in my lectures say, "Well, that's okay. I've got a generator." Okay, if electricity is disconnected, your generator's not going to work either.
Bummer.
Bummer.
No, we're going to some more music. I still got the music in me. The lovely, talented Kiki D. I've got the music in me. We'll be right back, folks. So thanks again, Lee, for participating. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. I wasn't expecting a credit at the end.
Well, I always thank anybody who calls in and my guests. So it's good. It's all good.
And now we're world famous. Everybody was listening, right?
Yeah, we have good listenership. So, can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. You can download the ebook from Barnes and Noble, or you can go out to my site and contact me directly, and I'll get you a copy. My site is www.newspirit, and it's spelled N-U, Spirit Connections, so it's newspiritconnections.com. And I also have New Spirit Expressions, which are where a lot of my books and coming information is from. So either one of those, or you can always call me. It's I always have to think that 813-774-1477, and I'll be happy to get you a copy of the book.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan. I added a little bit of more time on 2 more minutes. I had stopped recording, but I do want to say once again thanks to Reverend Lee Thomas Marsh for participating and giving your valuable input, and you're always welcome on the show, Lee.
All right.
So thank you again, and what was I going to say? If you could just repeat that information one more time.
Sure.
Because I want to make sure it gets on the recording.
Okay. Yeah, the book is called The 2012 Clock, What Time Is It? And you can download the e-book version from Barnes & Noble. I haven't got it on Amazon yet, but I'm trying. Or you can go to my websites, which in this case is www.newspirit, and that's spelled N-U, Spirit, Connections.com, or newspiritexpressions.com. or you can call me at 813-774-1477, and I'll be happy to get you a copy.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dan. And if you would, well, actually, I would like to say to everybody out there, thank you for listening. And, always laugh along with me when I do my little glitches on the show. So thanks for standing by and listening and laughing along with me when these little glitches happen. But I just wanted to say have a good night, everybody, and many blessings to you all. And remember, 2012 is the beginning, not the end.